Today we're going to revisit patch 9.11. That's this one, the one that they made the video for about the neon changes and the ping changes. But we've had a couple days to digest some of these changes and what's going to happen. And I just have had some thoughts that lead me to be quite concerned, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. But just before we do that, first I'm going to tell you why you should join the Gosu Academy, which you can do for free for 30 days using the link in the description or the pinned comment. And I was thinking about different reasons why you might want to join the Academy. And amongst all the usual stuff, I was actually just thinking about this, right? That you can get a 30-day trial for free and get access to this kind of stuff where there's just like 50 plus hours of video content there. Right, so over Christmas, you don't want to spend time with your family or whatever. You've just got a bunch of high-level Valorant content that you can just go and watch. And just learn about the game from people like Neil Zenio, right, the coach of Team Heretics. Why not do that for free? And on top of that, of course, you'll get all of these benefits, and you'll get things like the daily 10-mans that you might want to take part of. You'll get to learn from some pretty good coaches here as well, some of who you may have heard of. And it's just a great way of potentially getting better at the game. And remember, this is all for free for 30 days. So you might as well just do it. It's a free 30 days of just having access to a bunch of content that you might be pretty interested in if you're watching this channel, and having a chance to play 10-mans and learn from coaches as well. So yeah, go and join the Gosu Academy today using the link in the description or the pinned comment, and spend that Christmas away from your family learning about Valorant instead. So let's dive into these changes then, and let's start with Neon. Right, because of course the neon nerf is perhaps the big one, the people that are most interested in, and of course I'm not gonna go through all the changes again, but neon is getting nerfed, right? And a lot of people, actually, I was somewhat surprised to see, kind of agreed with my initial take that maybe this nerf was a bit too far. You could actually see this in a lot of the reactions on Twitter or on Reddit, like this one here, right? Classic Riot, they make an overpowered agent and nerf it to be worse than their original state. And I think that this kind of sentiment around the neon nerf was actually quite prevalent. And I was a bit surprised by that. I thought that people would be like, yeah, kill neon. Yeah, I don't want to see neon anymore. But actually, the overwhelming sentiment that I found was that most people thought that this nerf was maybe a bit too far. And personally, I'm glad that the community reacted like that. And it was to my surprise that they did. Because, again, if you do look at Neon and the pick rates that Neon had, for instance, this was the highest pick rate Neon had in any of the Ascension tournaments, was 38%. Well, 38%, there's still 5 agents who have got a higher pick rate than Neon, right? It's not like overwhelmingly high. And even as we moved further on into the off-season, as Neon became just even more and more popular, still the numbers don't tell a story that would warrant a massive nerf for Neon, right? For instance, if we come to Red Bull Homeground, take a look at some of the pick rates there, you'll be like, oh, Neon at 44. Okay, that's like quite high, we're getting into territory of where a nerf is needed. But when you dive deeper into these numbers and actually take a look at what they mean, you'll realize that this number is only so high because Haven got played the most, and Neon is popular on Haven. That's why Breach is up here at 42% as well, right? That's really why Neon's pick rate here is so high. And in fact, if you take a look at just the map numbers and dive into it deeper, you'll see that, oh, Neon essentially is meta on 3 maps. That's not that big of a deal. That's good. That's like, okay, that's good. And if you go to the other duelists as well, right, if we take a look at Raze and Jet, what you'll see basically in this tournament was that you had 3 Neon maps, 2 Raze maps, and 2 Jet maps. And Jet's pick rate is only so low because the 2 Jet maps weren't picked that much. And that sounds like a balanced duelist meta. So why make such a radical change? Well, one reason that you could give for it, of course, is that the map pool is changing. And with that map pool changing, it probably would slightly favor Neon even more, right? We're losing Ascent, which is a bad Neon map. We are losing Sunset, which is a meta Neon map. But we're gaining Fracture, which probably would be a meta Neon map, I would have thought. And we're also gaining Lotus, which again is a map that maybe would be like a 50-50 with Raze. So overall, it probably would slightly boost Neon even more and kind of push Jet down perhaps a bit more. But again, would it be overwhelming? I don't know. And in fact, the reaction was strong enough that actually prompted one of the Riot devs to actually respond and say this, where to, kind of a why is Neon put into the ground type comment. She's still stronger than she was before her initial buff in 8.11, in my opinion. I think there's a bit of a knee-jerk in terms of just reading the change list rather than trying in the game. Slide accuracy is still good, it's just not 100% accurate. And this, to me, was really where I started to get worried when I read this message. The reason for that is because I don't want the slide accuracy to necessarily be good, right? I think that was the thing that was like the main problem, that the slide accuracy was good. So I don't really want to hear that the slide accuracy is still good, because I prefer the agent to be good elsewhere and have the kind of part of it that, you know, was really frustrating to play against not be that good. And so now let's also compare the old Neon pre any of the buffs to what we will be getting post patch 9.11. And actually, when you take a look at it, this is essentially what we've got. We've got more slide accuracy than we did before. Even though the slide accuracy has been nerfed from where it was, it still is better than before. You've got better fuel recharge, and you have a longer stun versus having a whole less stun, which I actually think is a pretty significant deal. You obviously now have an 8-cost ult that is shorter as well. So when you look at that, you think about the old Neon, you think about the Neon that we're about to get. Which one would you actually prefer? And, you know, Penguin there was saying basically that, you know, this version of Neon is still actually better than the old Neon. And maybe, you know, when you're looking at this, you could go, okay, yeah, maybe it's, you know, a tiny bit better than the old Neon was, but I'm going to show you that that isn't a good solution. Because now let's take a look at the pick rates at Masters Madrid. And I'm just going to ask you a simple question here. What do you think Neon's pick rate at Masters Madrid was? That's right, it was 4%. 4%. So even if we argue that, hey, this new Neon that we're about to get is slightly better than the old Neon, well, that doesn't make a difference, because it was down at 4%. So even if you are slightly better and getting to 6-7%, that's not a healthy spot to be in. The whole reason you gave Neon a significant buff was because of this. Because Neon wasn't good enough. So even if you're having to even make the argument that this new Neon is going to be better, don't worry guys, it's going to be slightly better than the old Neon. Well, that old Neon needed a significant buff. So what, we now again need to give this new Neon a significant buff? And then there's the other part of this patch as well, which is of course the ping changes. And for the ping changes, I actually perfectly understand this argument here that they're using right now, right? That the pings were meant to be used as a communication tool, not a gameplay tool. And so changing it, you know, somewhat makes sense to enable that to happen, right? That is absolutely fine. I have absolutely no problem with that and making these changes because of that. But I think the thing is, a lot of people have, you know, suggested that this change really came about. The reason that they really made this change was to stop the post-plant spam meta that we have seen, you know, develop across a number of sites. But here's why I think that it won't really fix the problem. The first thing is, of course, was this really a problem in ranked? Probably not, right? In ranked, you're probably not getting the coordination of, you know, getting everyone back into main, smoking yourselves off and playing for a spam, right? It was more so, you know, at the higher levels, the pro play kind of levels. So the first thing is we need to keep in mind who this is actually aimed at. And so when you keep in mind that this is aimed at pro players, you might know that pro players tend to be pretty good at the game, and they play the game a lot. And that means that, you know, they know the maps pretty well. You know, so if you're here and you can't spam it, you know, and you smoke yourself off, if you're a pro player, you probably have a decent idea of where that spike is going to be anyway. And even if you don't, right, you could even learn lineups for spam as well, right? Like if you, even if you didn't have a ping, you could be like, well, okay, I need to stand on this tile here, you know, crouch, and then I need to aim, you know, at this little part here in between this brick, and just learn a lineup and, you know, spam from this lineup here instead, right? Like there's still tricks that you can do. Also on your map as well, it will tell you somewhat, right? You get this little icon of where you are facing, this little point just here, right? That kind of tells you which direction you're facing in. And so you can kind of see, you know, generally, are you spamming in the right area? Is my, you know, little guy like lined up on my map to where the spike is? And the thing is, maybe in 1v1s, 2v2s, you know, this would make it harder, right? If you couldn't ping the right spot. Maybe you'll miss it in a 1v1, 2v2. But my point is, that's not the problem. The problem isn't that people in 1v1s and 2v2s were playing for spam, because they mostly weren't. The thing we're trying to stop is for 4 people and 5 people to be playing spam post plants. But the ping change doesn't fix that. Are you telling me that a pro team, if they can't ping this, that they couldn't have enough people spamming bullets in the right general vicinity with 5 people to be able to kill someone defusing the spike? If there's 5 people out here, you're telling me that 5 pro players can't spam this well enough to kill someone on the spike? I'd simply refuse to believe it. All you really need to do as a pro team is make sure that you are careful of where you are planting. right? Don't just lackadaisically plant. We know exactly where we are planting every single time. And as long as you do that, with 4 or 5 people out in these areas, you should be able to spam the spike. And if you can't, then I just don't think you're very good at the game. And so overall, I don't think that the ping change will really help in the area that it's trying to really help, and probably will just cause problems elsewhere, you know, for people playing on servers that are maybe multi-language, and now pinging is just harder in general for everyone. So it might just create some problems in ranked, but not really fix the kind of main issue that we're trying to fix in pro play. And again, that is not to say that this ping change in general, the philosophy behind the ping change of it not being used as a gameplay tool, is a bad one. That is a perfectly reasonable reason to try and change that. But I don't think that it is going to have the effect that you really want it to. And that if you are a pro team, you probably still should be playing for these spam post plants on a decent amount of these sites, because it's still probably going to be the most effective way and safest way of winning rounds.